Welcome back to The Explainer. So let's jump right into a wildly fascinating and super fast-moving situation happening right here in Australia. We're talking about the absolute explosion of OpenClaw AI consultants. Over the last year, this market has just gone gangbusters across Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, the Gold Coast, everywhere. OpenClaw is an absolute giant right now. It actually just blew past React to become the most starred project on GitHub. We're talking 375,000 stars and something like 3.2 million active users globally. But with this massive rush of local experts popping up out of nowhere offering to get these autonomous AI agents humming for your business, a really confusing problem has hit the market. It is incredibly crowded, and the services you're actually getting are totally all over the map.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand why this consulting space feels like the Wild West right now, you really just have to look at the sheer speed of adoption. Check this out. According to Deloitte, AI adoption among Australian SMBs hit a staggering 69% in early 2026. That's up from just 40% in mid-2024. That hypergrowth means the demand for hands-on, practical help has completely lapped the market's ability to offer any sort of standardized quality. Everybody wants an AI agent reading their emails, updating the CRM, managing the calendar, especially since OpenClaw runs on your own gear for a fraction of what those big enterprise SaaS platforms charge.
But here's where the head-scratching really begins for business owners. You go out looking for an expert, and you get two quotes for what sounds like the exact same OpenClaw deployment. On the one hand, a consultant quotes you $1,500 to, quote-unquote, get OpenClaw running. On the other hand, another firm quotes you $15,000 for the exact same promise. That's a 10x difference. So that sets up our core mystery for today. Because as you'll see, this massive price gap, it's not about one firm just greedily marking up their rates. It's entirely about scope. They are literally selling you fundamentally different things. Which brings us to the true cost of setup, and we're going to look at a cautionary tale here. To really grasp the difference between a quick setup and a proper implementation, let's look at a real-world disaster. This timeline shows what happened to a legal practice up in Brisbane. They hired a local consultant to deploy an AI agent for client intake triage. The consultant did exactly what you'd expect for $1,500. They installed OpenClaw, hooked it up to the firm's email, tweaked a few basic skills, and walked away. 2 weeks, boom, done. But fast forward 4 months, and you've got a total compliance nightmare. The firm suddenly realized their shiny new AI agent was processing highly privileged client emails by routing them straight through a US cloud API. No audit logs anywhere. The staff had zero clue what they were allowed to prompt. Even worse, a random platform update quietly changed how document attachments were handled, and nobody noticed. It ultimately took a massive 6-week architectural rescue mission by a firm called Sunburnt AI to fix the data routing, get everything migrated onto Australian-hosted infrastructure, and finally train the team. When they did the post-mortem on that incident, one takeaway really hit the nail on the head. The original consultant did competent technical work. The scope of the conversation before installation was the gap. Think about that for a second. The danger here didn't come from shoddy coding. That $1,500 consultant did exactly what they were paid to do. They installed the software. The catastrophic failure was the complete absence of any planning around data sovereignty, compliance, and human training. For most businesses dealing with sensitive data, getting the software running is a necessary step, sure, but it is absolutely not the only step. And listen, the stakes for getting this wrong are about to skyrocket. On December 10, 2026, the new Privacy Act amendments take effect right here in Australia. These new rules explicitly demand that organizations disclose whenever automated systems make decisions involving personal info. And you have to be able to explain how those decisions are made. Any AI agent touching your client data is squarely in the crosshairs of these obligations. So if you just bought a cheap, basic setup, you are entirely on your own for figuring out how to keep the regulators off your back. So moving on to the iceberg model, let's explore the 5 layers of a true implementation.
Now, what's really interesting here is how a real implementation breaks down. I love this iceberg analogy. Simply installing OpenClaw is just that tiny visible tip poking out of the water. When you're paying $15,000, you're actually buying the massive foundation sitting below the surface. We're talking workflow assessment, data sovereignty architecture, security hardening, governance, and team training. Let's peel back each of these layers real quick, just so you know exactly what you should be demanding from a consultant. The very first layer, which is honestly probably the most valuable part, happens before anyone writes a single line of code. Sunburnt AI actually calls this the X-ray workshop. It's this highly structured session where they map out your actual business workflows to find where AI can create genuine measurable leverage. They're looking for tasks that are repetitive enough to justify the spend and flagging the ones that involve sensitive data. And here's the kicker. A true professional consultant will sometimes look at your big idea and tell you absolutely not to build it because the ROI just isn't there. Yeah, a great consultant will actively talk you out of giving them your money. That's what you're really paying for at this tier. Strategic assessment, not just blind execution. So the crucial point is how you actually handle your data. And that brings us to layer 2, data sovereignty architecture. Yes, OpenClaw runs locally on your machines, but the large language model it's talking to usually doesn't. If you're pinging OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google, your prompts are flying straight to US servers. Now, that's totally fine for summarizing a random public article, but it's an absolute landmine if that prompt contains a client's personal info under the Australian privacy principles. Proper high-end architectures use hybrid routing. They brilliantly route the low-stakes stuff to the cloud, but they lock down sensitive data by routing it to a local model like Ollama, hosted securely on local infrastructure like AWS or GCP in Sydney. It keeps your client data strictly onshore.
Then we hit layer 3, which is security hardening. Let me throw a crazy stat at you. 7% of the skills on the OpenClaw marketplace have been found to leak credentials. 7%. OpenClaw is an incredibly powerful open source beast. The codebase moves at lightning speed, and there are over 44,000 skills up for grabs. A default out-of-the-box installation simply doesn't have the security chops a real business needs. You have to have restricted UI access, strictly vetted skills, encrypted credential storage, and a rock-solid patch management routine. If a consultant tells you security hardening is an optional extra, run. That tells you everything you need to know about them.
The final 2 layers round out the whole shebang: governance and team training. And these two really go hand in hand. To keep regulators happy, especially with those strict 2026 Privacy Act updates right around the corner, you need ironclad governance. We're talking strictly defined agent boundaries so the AI knows exactly what it can and cannot touch, plus comprehensive audit logging so you know exactly what it did. But honestly, none of that matters if your humans don't know how to use it. AI adoption always fails if you forget about the people. Proper change management ensures your staff knows exactly what they should prompt, and more importantly, what they should never, ever put into the system.
All right, let's talk about choosing your clause and how to match your scope to your scale.
And this brilliantly illustrates how you can make all of this actionable for your specific situation. Because look, not every single business needs a massive, bulletproof enterprise deployment, right? So let's break down the 3 main tiers you'll see out there. First, the standard OpenClaw setup. This is honestly perfect for small businesses, say 5 to 20 people. If you're just using it for internal productivity and aren't dealing with heavy, regulated data, a fast setup with sensible default security is totally fine. Then in the middle, you have SunnyClaw. This is your mid-market tier for companies with 20 to 100 people. Think accounting or law firms. You absolutely need that end-to-end data sovereignty and compliance architecture. Finally, you've got NemoClaw. That's NVIDIA's hardened framework for massive enterprises that require strict SLA-backed infrastructure. The big takeaway here? Everybody needs to be safe, for sure, but you don't necessarily need a $15,000 enterprise budget. Just match your data sensitivity to the right tier.
Finally, let's wrap up with the empowerment framework and the essential questions you must ask. So, how do you protect yourself in this crowded, chaotic market? How do you weed out the pros from the folks just trying to cash in on the AI hype? You can use this empowerment framework. It's 5 critical questions to aggressively filter any consultant's quote. Number 1, do you scope out the work before you install anything? Number 2, where exactly does inference occur and how does that affect my compliance? Number 3, is security hardening baked into this price, or is it going to be a surprise add-on? Number 4, will I walk away with a governance framework that I can confidently hand over to a regulator? And number 5, do I own everything you build, or am I locked into an endless dependency loop with your agency? Guys, the consultants who can answer these confidently, they are worth every penny. The ones who dodge them, they're just selling you a quick install. Which brings us to the ultimate question you have to ask yourself when you're staring down that price tag. Are you buying a true implementation that actually assesses your workflows, keeps your data legally onshore, and trains your team? Or are you just paying for an installation that leaves all the heavy lifting and literally all the regulatory risk sitting squarely on your shoulders? You've got to look beneath the surface of your AI investments, demand crystal clear scope, and make sure your business is genuinely ready for the future. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I really hope this framework helps you navigate your own AI journey with some serious confidence. Catch you next time.